Hi, I'm Jenny Pryor from Living Bread Baker, and today I'm going to tell you my favorite method that I use every weekend for making delicious sourdough pancakes. This method makes a really big batch, and big batches are really important because I have 4 kids and a 5th one on the way, and it makes so much that there's usually leftovers that I freeze for later, and they're so fluffy and they're truly fermented. So the first thing that I do to make these pancakes that's different from what you might see elsewhere is I make a sponge. A sponge is basically like a levain or a starter, a pre-ferment, where you are going to take a batch of discard. If you want to learn more about discard, I have some videos for you that I've linked in the description box about how to store discard, what it is. But discard sourdough starter is really helpful because it is a great way to make things truly fermented, add more flavor, and also can act as almost like a buttermilk or a dairy substitute. So I take 200 grams of my sourdough starter discard that I've been storing in my fridge, and I mix it with water and flour. Now in this mixture, I'm going to use 650 grams of water, and I use room temperature water, and 500 grams of all-purpose flour. Use all-purpose flour. Don't use bread flour for this because bread flour creates too much gluten, which is not going to give you the texture in your pancakes that you want. We want pancakes that are really soft and will pull apart and absorb our butter and our syrup easily and not be chewy. If you want to add more whole wheat flour, I tend to use half and half in a lot of my recipes. So you want to see the full recipe with the notes for how to do that because I change a little bit of the ratio of flour to water to add whole wheat flour. Once your sponge is mixed, you're going to make sure it's covered and it's going to sit at room temperature overnight. So I always do this the night before. Usually it's Friday night when I'm preparing this. And overnight for me is usually 6 to 12 hours. Sometimes I'm mixing it at 8 o'clock, but often I'm mixing it closer to 10 or 11. The next day, you will take off the cover of your bowl and you'll see lots of bubbles. You'll see a different texture that's really light and fluffy. And now it's time to prepare the ingredients that we're going to directly add into the sponge mixture. First, you're going to want to take the butter and melt this. And after it's fully melted, take your unsalted butter and let it cool so it's not super hot. It's helpful to put this in a separate heat-safe bowl or carafe so it cools down faster. While that's cooling, it's time to add the other ingredients. First, I'm gonna add my dry ingredients, my baking soda, salt. I add a little cinnamon to it as well, and I also will add my vanilla. I like to add sweetener to my pancakes. So a sweetener I love to use is actually applesauce. So I'll use 1/4 cup of applesauce. Applesauce is great because it also acts as an oil substitute. A lot of pancakes and waffles, oil is an important ingredient that helps them brown more easily and helps them have a really good texture and easier to work with the batter. So applesauce is a great thing to use. If you don't have that, then use 1/4 cup of brown sugar, which tastes delicious as well. You can also use honey or maple syrup as your sweetener. I get those fully mixed into the batter. Something I do to make sure my pancakes are extra fluffy is I separate the eggs. So take 2 eggs, and you will need a separate bowl for this. You will separate the egg white, put the egg white in the separate bowl that you've prepared, and the egg yolks you'll put directly into your sponge, which is becoming your batter. And do that with both eggs. You can add more eggs as if you like. I usually just use 2. So now that the 2 egg yolks are mixed into our batter, it's time to mix those in with our sponge and our salt and baking soda and cinnamon and vanilla that are already in there. And on the separate bowl, we can use a stand mixer. If you have 2 stand mixers like I do, you can use a stand mixer, but if not, just use a hand mixer to beat up these egg whites. So the egg whites form soft peaks. They should be white and fluffy, not hard peaks, just soft peaks that when you lift up the beater, it should just droop down a little bit, but still keep its shape. So now that we've added most of our ingredients to our batter, our butter hopefully is cooled. Make sure that it is cooled enough. It should be just warm to the touch. It should not burn your finger. Or if you're using a thermometer, this should be about 100 degrees. What I like to do to make sure that the heat of the butter is evenly dispersed in the batter is I will begin mixing with my stand mixer. If you are not using a stand mixer, maybe have a second pair of hands, mixing it with a spatula or a spoon while you slowly add the butter and make sure it's fully mixed. So now that our batter, we've mixed in our egg yolks, we've mixed in the salt, baking soda, vanilla, some cinnamon. The cinnamon is up to you, you don't have to use it. our sweetener, and our melted butter. Hopefully those ingredients are all fully combined. You shouldn't see any ingredients that are separated. So now that that's mixed up, you'll take a spatula or a gentle mixer and you will slowly fold in the fluffy egg whites. So gently fold these in so that all the egg whites are incorporated. Don't need to overmix this point. And you're gonna set your batter to the side, and it's time to heat up your griddle or your skillet. Once your pan or your griddle is preheated, it's time to add just a little bit of butter. I use unsalted butter for this, and I usually just use about a quarter of a teaspoon or just a knife blade full, and use a spatula to swirl it around the pan. And this helps to make sure that our first batch of pancakes doesn't stick, kind of primes the pan, and also gives us more crispy edges on our pancakes. You can do this before every batch that you make, or just do it a few times to make sure that they're not sticking. So use a scoop. I'm using a 1/4 measure scoop that is basically like a cookie scoop. I've linked down below. This is really helpful because that's a trigger to help the batter to fully release into the pan, and it makes the perfect size pancakes, in my opinion. So use your 1/4 cup measure or other scoop, and you're gonna scoop your batter and put them in rounds about 2 inches apart on your pan or griddle. You want them to cook without disturbing them, without moving them, until you start to see the edges set, they're becoming hard and baked looking, and then in the middle of your pancake you should see large bubbles. So wait until you see large bubbles in your pancakes and start with the first one that you put into the pan. Pour your spatula under it, flip it over, and move around your pan in the order that you place your pancakes to flip them all over. As they're baking on the second side, do not pat them down. Resist the urge. I know that many of us have seen that done where they were patted down, but that will press air out of your pancakes, deflate them, and take out some of the beautiful air that's being created as they bake. So to check for doneness, take your spatula under that first pancake you flipped and just see if the other side is a golden brown. If it is, then it's time to take all the pancakes off of your griddle or your pan and put them onto a separate plate. And then you're gonna repeat the process until all your batter is used up. This batch makes about 34 medium to large size pancakes when I make it. They are delicious. My family devours them. And they do turn out really fluffy and soft and absorb syrup really easily. And they really work well to freeze later. So if you have leftovers, let them cool completely. I usually put parchment sheets between them as I freeze them so they don't stick together in a large gallon-sized Ziploc bag. Put them in the freezer, and then you can easily defrost them in the toaster. This recipe is great for adapting to different flavor preferences by making additions to it. And it's also really easy to make for people with special allergies or diet restrictions. So you can see those adjustments in the recipe that I've linked below. So I really am excited for you to use this recipe to make wonderful pancakes for your family and friends on the weekend. So please share this video with a friend. If you like it, please hit the like button, subscribe for more sourdough help, and I will see you in the next video. And I hope that you keep connecting with sourdough and with bread. I'll see you later.